Moshi Moshi.
Hello,
I'm Zab Ramsbotham,
and I'm Annie Ramsbotham.
and we're the Rambling Ramsbothams.
Our journey might be rambling, but we hope this podcast isn't.
So here we are, and we're getting ready to record this episode about the Vernal Equinox.
Yeah.
That's a big topic for today.
Yeah, we also have a big life update that you've read in the title of this episode, and we'll get to that.
Yeah, or if you were on our newsletter.
You already know.
Yeah, this was our secret for February.
Yeah. So why are we talking about the Vernal Equinox in this?
Yeah, so to start out, it's finally almost spring.
Finally.
Maybe, depending on the calendar. So it's interesting. So the vernal equinox is the equinox that happens in March or spring, and it's the first astronomical day of spring. Mm. So it's kind of a nice day to spend looking forward to the coming spring and all the blossoms and good weather that we can hopefully start enjoying soon.
I hope so.
Yeah, so this is like...
And you get a holiday, like a day off work, don't you?
I do.
Shibun no Hi?
Yeah, the vernal equinox is a holiday, and I'll talk about that in just a second.
Oh.
But when does spring start? So quick note, you might have heard us talking about another holiday called Setsubun, and we were talking about, well, that's the start of spring, or the day before the first day of spring. Mm-hmm. So a little bit of confusion, since Japan is a very east meets west country. I don't know.
Sometimes, yeah, they have both traditions sometimes.
Yeah, so spring has quite a few start dates.
Depending on which calendar you're looking at.
Yeah, so the meteorological season is March 1st to the 31st of May. The solar, or also sometimes called the Celtic season, is the 1st of February to the 30th of April. And then on the old Japanese calendar, it's the 4th of February, and I don't know when it ends. But the astronomical season is the 21st of March to the 21st of June.
It's crazy how different those dates are. Like the solar one is February 1st, and then the latest, the astronomical season, is March 21st. So it's like almost 2 months.
Yeah, it's very different. My favorite is maybe astronomical, because I feel like that feels more real.
Yeah, the 4th of February, when we were talking about Setsubun, I know it was like technically the day before the first day of spring, but everybody was like, well, it doesn't feel like spring.
Yeah, and then it's like been snowing a bunch. Even this past week, it snowed. So it is very not felt like spring.
I guess, to be fair, Setsubun doesn't mean spring. It just means seasonal division. So I guess maybe it's just the first crossover of like the first time you're like, all right, we're exiting winter. I
guess so. Yeah, it's kind of confusing. I prefer the astronomical. And then I'm kind of into the meteorological.
What is the meteorological?
I
like
think
the weather calendar?
Yeah, meteorological has more to do with like weather divisions, and I think it's just literally equally portioned, like each season is 3 months. And so it's like equally broken down, like January, February, March, and then March, April, May, kind of like.
And then I guess the astronomical one would just be where we are, like in our circuit around the sun.
I think so. And then, of course, the solar one, or maybe that's the solar one. Is astronomical more just about the stars, and then solar one's more about
I just know
the
that
sun?
I believe astronomy, but not astrology.
Yeah, whole different topic. But yeah, I believe astronomical season. So I'm looking forward to the vernal equinox.
Yeah, and finally it'll be warmer again.
Yeah, and that, of course, goes to the solstice. So that's the 21st of June.
Do you remember the 72 seasons?
Yes.
That I really like and you are skeptical of? Anyway, they start March 21st for like the official start of spring on that seasonal thing.
Oh, so they're into the astronomical season.
I guess so. At least March 21st is the beginning of the section on spring. Specifically, the part of the 72nd season thing, March 21st to 25th is the sparrows start to nest micro season.
I don't really know what, I guess it's embarrassing. I don't know if I really know what a sparrow, I think I kind of know what it looks like. I don't know if I know what it sounds like. But I have started to hear more birds recently, and when I was walking to work today, the sun was out, and it is definitely the time of the year when the sun's out, it feels like it's warming you up.
Yeah.
You know how sometimes in winter the sun is like out and it can be a beautiful blue day, but you're still cold?
Yeah, it's like such a meager, it's just light, there's no heat.
Yeah, but like I feel like when the season's starting to change to spring, when the sun comes out, it finally starts to, you can feel it.
I opened all the
warm you up.
windows in the house today.
That's shocking, because it's still pretty cold today.
It was cold, but we're really lucky that we have east-facing window. So in the morning,
we get the morning light.
The sunlight comes in, and it was pretty warm. It's chilly now, but
yeah, we're back to cold.
Enjoyable when the sun was out.
Yeah, so those are the different spring start dates. And as Annie mentioned, it is a holiday here in Japan. So it's the vernal equinox, and I get the day off work.
It's nice.
And it's interesting because it's an astronomical holiday. I guess like all the equinoxes and both equinoxes and both solstices, or solstice. I don't know what that one is.
I don't think it's solstice.
Maybe. Let us know. It does shift. So it's anywhere between March 19th and the 21st, because I guess it depends on just the seasonality and the shifting, and I guess even like leap years can play into that. So it's officially put on the calendar in the previous year's February. So in February 2023, they decided, March 20th, 2024 is going to be the vernal equinox holiday.
That's crazy. They just decided 1 year in advance?
Yeah. I mean, I guess they could do it farther in advance. But when I was researching this, they said that they put it on the official calendar the year before when they're sorting out the national holidays. A little
surprise calendar day.
Yeah, I guess you can probably look it up and know when it's going to be, but it's not officially set until the year before.
Wow.
So interestingly, and I mentioned this in one of the other episodes, might even have been the Setsubun episode, that in and kind of around World War II era Japan, they were making Shinto the state religion to try and, kind of whip people into a fervor to support the war effort. And that was one way they were like really distinguishing themselves from the world. And it was like a unique thing that they were using. So this actually used to be known as Shunki Kurosai, and it was a Shinto holiday to celebrate past emperors. And so it was that way from 1878 to 1945. However, once America occupied Japan, they said you can't have church and state as a single thing. You got to separate them. And so they divided it. So Shinto holidays got rebranded. So this is one that they were like, now it's vernal equinox day. So yeah, it's kind of just an interesting little tidbit.
Yeah.
So it used to be something different. The big deal with the vernal equinox is there's a lot of significance surrounding the day. I guess kind of like Setsubun. But one example is Higan, and this is a 7-day Buddhist holiday. It's like a little holy period, and it's celebrated in both spring and fall, so around the equinoxes. And particularly the fall one is nice because it's when the Japanese spider lily, or the Higanbana, Higan flower, is in bloom.
The spider lily, in my head, doesn't sound like it would be a very pretty flower. Like, it seems like kind of a creepy, stringy flower, but it's like that red, I guess it is a very delicate looking kind of lily.
Yeah, and if you like Kimetsu no Yaiba
I
or
was
Demon
just gonna
Slayer,
say that.
You know what it is.
Is it in the title sequence of Demon Slayer?
I think in the first season, I don't know, I can't remember.
It's that red flower that's in the anime intro.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're in full bloom during the autumn Higan period.
Yep. And so the spring and fall equinoxes are actually the middle day of this period. So there are 3 days before, then you have the equinox, and then there are 3 days after. And they say it's a time where Buddhists think to change their lives as the seasons are changing to better themselves. And it's kind of similar to Oban. A lot of people go home to visit their family. Sometimes businesses close, but honestly, I don't remember anything about this last year. Do you?
No, but I guess we're not Buddhist, and we don't have family here to go home and visit, so I guess I'm not surprised.
Yeah, it's not a holiday to the point like it's it's not like things shut down, kind of like the New Year's period. It's more of if you're Buddhist, you would know more about it. And then the Vernal Equinox is a national holiday, so you probably get that day off work.
Mm-hmm.
But the 3 days before and the 3 days after is more of a if you're Buddhist, not really a like nationally celebrated thing.
You don't get the whole week off work. That would be nice.
That would be super nice. But a quote said that people who normally worked in the fields had more leisure time to evaluate their own practices and to make a renewed effort to follow Buddhism, and the seasons beginning to change is a symbol that Buddhists should change their lives in order to reach enlightenment. So we thought it would be a fitting time to talk about a big change in our lives coming this fall.
Yeah, Zeb was very poetic with this. We've been like kind of thinking about this change and moving and things. And Zeb
we
was
were like, when should we talk about it on the podcast?
I was like, let's not talk about it. And then the week before be like, oh, by the way, we're moving. Because I'm in, I don't know, a little bit of denial. But
Dang.
we'll talk. I'll share why.
I'll talk about it. A little therapy session.
No. I'm not very good at change, I guess. So, but anyway, let's quit like dancing around the topic, I guess. Do you want to talk about like...
So yeah, basically you might have noticed if you've been a long-time listener that in 2022 we talked about recontracting with the JET program and kind of what that entails and what that means. So the keen-eared listener might have noticed in 2023 we did not talk about recontracting with the JET program.
In the winter, yeah.
Yeah, and it's because we decided not to.
Yeah.
So I was offered another contract for, I guess it would have been August 2024 through July 2025. Mm-hmm. They did ask me if I would like to stay for a third year, and I let them know that no, I would not like to re-sign a contract. But you keep having this issue.
That sounds a little more like intense. It was just kind of like a thanks but no thanks. It wasn't like a no, I would not like to.
Yeah, it wasn't like dramatic. I have this issue where I keep typing. I try to type re-sign as in re-sign a contract, but isn't that just resign? So how do you? Is it
you have to put a dash
sign? Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I said I wasn't going to re-sign the contract, and so what does that really like mean when you don't recontract? Basically nothing. You have a form and you circle the box that says no thanks, and then they do ask, like they asked a reason. It was like a literal like 3-line, like they basically had 3 sentences. They were like, why?
Wow. Yeah, how do you cram all that into 3 sentences?
I know it's a lot.
Did you put anything down for reason, or just
I was
you could
just
put
like,
personal? Yeah,
just like time for a change. So I said no, and then other than that, like nothing really happens. July 31st, 2024 will be the last day on my contract.
Yeah, because all this happens in the winter. Like this happened in December
I think
or
they
even
asked
November.
I think they asked me late October, but you don't technically have to tell them until almost even January. But they do not really pressure you. They'll ask you a few times leading up to that because they want to know.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense because if you say no, which is fine, they just have to then submit paperwork to get a new ALT.
Yep. So that's like the biggest thing is kind of any day now, actually, prospective ALTs around the world will be figuring out if they got accepted. They had their interviews back in February. Pretty soon they'll know if they got accepted.
That's such an agonizing period. I remember just like waiting.
But it's
I don't think you know until April.
It's like May that you get your like placement.
No, even like finding out whether or not we got it.
I think it was late March.
Was it that early? I feel like it was really close to the start of the summer.
No, I think it was like late March. They let me know if I'd gotten it, but then you have to wait like 2 more months to hear anything about the placement. So it's just a lot of waiting. So yeah, at some point coming up, I think in like May or June, I think in May, like I'll hear who it is, and then in June they'll tell me it's okay to contact the person, and so then I can like initiate like a conversation with them or send them an email. Yeah,
and that'll be cool. It'll be like an exciting time for that person.
Yeah, and it's cool for us because, well, for me, but if you complete your contract, your contracting organization is obligated to pay for your flight home, and so what does all that look like? As long as you complete your contract and you're in like good standing, they're obligated to pay for your flight home. And basically, you get 30 days from contract to end. So, or you have like, it's like a long period where you can still stay in Japan as a tourist and they'll still pay for your flight home.
Mm-hmm.
And then you cannot enter another contract with a new company.
Well, you could, but then the jet program wouldn't pay for
home.
your flight.
Yeah.
It's not like illegal. It's just then you would give up a pretty expensive ticket home for us, at least. Like to America, the flights are pretty expensive. So yeah, that was a really big decision that we've been weighing for a long time. But there were a few options. We didn't have to decide to leave Japan, of course. Your visa in Japan is tied to your work. So I guess that was the biggest factor, was that you weren't necessarily wanting to be an English teacher anymore.
Yeah, I didn't want to be an English teacher, and there are like some kind of like ways around that. Like eventually you can get permanent residency and then your visa is not tied to your work.
Mm-hmm.
And you can go like you start your own business route,
mm-hmm.
but then your visa is still kind of tied to work, but it's self-employment. There are a lot of like extra things. So we kind of started looking into options of like, okay, well, if we want to stay in Japan, what would that look like? And I knew that I don't want to be an English teacher. I think it's been a really fun, exciting, like thing, and it's something fun and new to try. But I'm not like a career English teacher, so I don't think that I can really do the job
mm-hmm.
justice. So I knew that I didn't want to do that. So then it was kind of looking into, well, I could, since I do have like an instructor visa or whatever the correct terminology is, because there's like a teaching visa and then there's like an instructor visa. One, I think you can work in a college. One, you're locked into lower education.
Yeah. And you have your master's degree. So for a while I was like, well, you could look into like college teaching positions, because another huge factor is that neither of us speak enough Japanese to get most jobs that you would need to speak. So English teaching is like a pretty big thing. But at a college, a lot of the times classes are taught in English.
At some of the bigger universities, they can be.
I guess not all the time, but
yeah, there are more classes taught in English
mm-hmm.
at the university level.
So there was that option. Again, the like paying for your own, like starting a business visa, we also looked at, because we were like, well, like what kind of business do you have to start? But there were a lot of rules around how much money the business has to make for it to be like viable, like to count as a business. It was pretty high threshold. You also have to have a physical storefront that's in a, I don't know if it was like commercially zoned area, but it was.
I think it has to be separate from your house.
Yeah, you can't just be like, well, I work at my house. So
yeah.
That's another investment. It overall didn't make sense for us to pursue that as a visa option.
Yeah, so I guess we wouldn't say it's impossible to find work in Japan and to get a visa. It just is more complicated, and there are a lot of hoops to jump through. And then us not really speaking the language like very confidently or very well led to like kind of this whole decision of, okay, well, what should we do? Because we could easily see ourselves staying in Japan for, up to 3 or 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a grace period that you get to search for a job if you have a visa. So if you can prove to immigration that you're actively looking for a job, mm-hmm. they can keep extending your visa. And so you can be unemployed and stay in Japan. But then we would really start using our savings
mm-hmm.
to stay here while looking for a job that we don't know if it's going to happen or not. And then another big caveat to that is we do like the area we live in.
Mm-hmm.
So we didn't really want to go to Tokyo or Osaka, even though that's kind of where there are more English-friendly jobs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot more opportunities there. But we just really like Kanazawa. Like, it's not that I mean, the big cities are fine, and a lot of people live there and love it. But yeah, it was not that appealing for us.
Yeah, we kind of just started weighing all these options and like really talking about what our goals were. And then I think one of the big things is ultimately past 3 to 5 years in Japan, we weren't sure if we could like picture ourselves staying here.
And permanent residency takes 10 years is kind of the general rule. There's different
there's
points.
Like a point system, but most people it takes them about 10 years to earn it.
And even then it's never guaranteed. Like you do have to apply, and then they have to decide if you count or not, and it seems very stressful. And for people who have made a life here, I'm sure it's certainly worth it. Like, I'm sure it's a pain, but worth it. But for us, we were, again, it was a crossroads of like, do we want to buckle down and put roots here? Or should we look broader?
This is like something we can talk about in like a future episode if we kind of do like a Japan in review. But then there are other, things that are definitely more prevalent at the moment that kind of stick to the forefront. And one is like, interestingly, even if you have permanent residency, there were a lot of foreign residents who have permanent residency that weren't able to come back to Japan during COVID because of the lockdown, but Japanese citizens were able to come back, but foreign residents who live here and have permanent residency were not allowed to come back. So there are like a bunch of quirky visa things going on. So basically, we decided it's time to try something new. And so we're far from being done with Japan, and I think we love it just as much as we did before, albeit we do understand the eccentricities of the country much more now that we've lived here.
I think I like it more. I mean, I know I like it more than when we were moving here.
Oh, that's interesting.
I have a bunch of notes of like my why, I guess, because I completely understand you not wanting to teach English again. And so I was like, well, maybe we could do the reverse and I could get a job and you could be on the dependent visa.
Yeah.
But again, that doesn't solve the problem of what would you do for money. Because right now I can work remote. And so it would just, kind of be that same problem. And then visa stability, what you just talked about, was another really big issue.
Yeah, and then the whole idea of like, the dependent can only work X amount of hours. So, we just decided.
But I honestly thought we would stay here for longer than 2 years. Like, I liked it more than, I really didn't know at first, but once we got here and I was like, oh, this is actually really cool. Like, I liked our time here. I've been enjoying our time here more than I expected. So that's why this decision was so difficult for me. Like, I know when I look at it logically, what's important long term and what is like air quotes worth it for me to put my energy into. I know that it makes sense to leave, but it still it's very difficult for me, I think.
Yeah. But that's kind of why we decided, well, it's time to like rip the Band-Aid off. And it's also a time, this period is like good for a smooth transition because there are a lot of things actually that are on a 2-year lease. For example, our car, our apartment, some things like that. Even some of our like insurance is expiring kind of like around the time we'd be leaving. So instead of having to then jump through all these hoops to renew and really lock in, it was kind of like an easy time for a relatively easy transition to move on to something new.
Yeah.
So it's a nice little moment though to realize we'll be leaving Japan, but it definitely makes me appreciate everything a little bit more. And especially like looking forward, it makes me really excited because we still have like a lot of time.
Yeah, we still have like 5 months. And even though it's a difficult choice, it's also kind of refreshing in a way and a privilege to realize that with enough planning, we could just look at the world and be like, okay, if we do want to put energy into setting up our life somewhere, where do we want that to be? And to be able to just look at it in that way is kind of nice. I mean, I don't take that part for granted either. So once we decided like we could set up our life here, or we could set up our life anywhere if we have enough time and planning. And so then that's when it kind of got fun as a new, like kind of a fun opportunity instead of a stressful, sad thing. Because it is a weird feeling to decide to leave somewhere that you love. And we did that when we left North Carolina. I still love North Carolina, but it was time for us to move. And then I gained a new appreciation for a whole new country and culture that I had no idea about when we decided to move here. And so it is bittersweet, but I'm excited to kind of develop a love for a whole new country.
Yeah, because that was ultimately our decision, was like, well, we know we love North Carolina. And I do think it's a quick note that's really interesting. When people that haven't ever left the country that they grew up in tell me how much they like the country that they live in, I'm always very slightly skeptical because I do feel like the more time I've spent outside the United States, ultimately the more I develop an appreciation for it. Because the more you realize like what you left.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of interesting to like
Some
look in
people
retrospect.
I think some people have the opposite reaction. Some people leave and then they're like,
No, that's true. Yeah. I think some people leave and they're like, oh, thank God I'm out of there.
yeah.
But for me, like when I traveled more, I realized more things about home that I liked. So that kind of became our decision, was like, well.
And certainly no country's perfect. Like the US has plenty of issues. Japan has plenty of issues. The country we picked to live in is not going to solve all our problems either.
Yeah. So that was the question then, was, well, do we go back to the United States or do we look for somewhere new?
Are you gonna say where we're moving?
Oh, I thought I'll let you say it.
Oh, we're going to the Netherlands.
Yeah.
So specifically the Limburg region in the south.
That's the ideal. So some of it will obviously come down. That's where we're going to land initially and try and get life quasi-established. But ultimately it will come down to what can we do or what can I do for work?
Yeah. So why the Netherlands?
That's a good question. I think that the Netherlands is a country that we both have a really good appreciation for. So we've both visited the Netherlands multiple times. I think we've both been on our own, and then we've both been together as a couple. And then that's actually where we got engaged, which I don't think is necessarily like, it's not a unique story within the world. I'm sure a lot of people get engaged in Amsterdam in the Netherlands.
Probably, yeah.
So it's not like
it's our city, but it does have like cozy memories from that time.
Yeah, I think a lot of my, I have a lot of really good travel memories connected to the Netherlands. Visiting your friend in her hometown was really fun. We've ridden our little town bikes we've rented kind of in different places in the country. And yeah, there's a lot that we both really enjoy and like about the Netherlands.
Yeah, and on a less like kind of like squishy like vibes feel, I guess some of the things that we appreciate about that country specifically are like the cycling infrastructure is really important to us as cyclists. The Limburg region specifically has a lot of nature. It's not, I mean, we've mostly only been to the larger cities in the Netherlands, but there's more housing options and more affordable housing options in a more rural area. And we're both from rural areas in the U.S., so we're not afraid to live rural again.
Yeah.
English opportunities are also a pretty big thing. We're going to be studying Dutch. I haven't started at all, but I'm still very much trying to limp along in my Japanese studies. But there are overall more English opportunities. And another pretty big one for me is physical proximity to family. We're still abroad and like across a pretty big ocean, but if we lived in Washington State and my family lives in North Carolina, it's not that different of a flight.
Yeah.
And it's less than half the time and cost of a flight from Japan right now.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing. It's honestly not even just physical proximity. It's also the financial cost to travel back home, especially for a couple. We're having to buy 2 flights. So the financial cost from Japan back to the United States is pretty big.
And I know the yen won't stay weak forever, but currently the yen is fairly weak compared to like when we go fly home.
Yeah, so if any money that I earn here on my yen salary is not really worth anything back home.
Which again is not like a long-term thing, but it's like something to think about, I guess.
Yeah, there's a lot tied up in that, but then also, just the actual time investment. You lose so much time traveling between the 2 countries, and then really the physical distance, obviously with the time zone, is a fairly big thing that sometimes is hard to play in conversation. I mean, we're pretty good at it now, like we know when we can talk to people when they're awake back home. But yeah, that's like a pretty big thing. And then honestly, the proximity to a lot of countries that we've kind of grown to love because we traveled in them previously is really interesting. That if you're in Japan, you can do a lot of really incredible domestic tourism within Japan and also in Southeast Asia. Although we've mentioned with the yen, although the yen is relatively strong to some other like Southeast Asian currencies, it's still like not as easy as I thought it would be to just travel outside of
And we've prioritized
Japan.
Traveling inside Japan while we're here, so we haven't really... we haven't been outside of Japan, which I guess some people might be like, that's crazy, you're so close to all these countries. And yeah, that's fair. But I've also seen so much in Japan just while we've been here. So
yeah, and there's so much to do in Japan. But I'm also excited about the opportunity to be in, like mainland Europe. So I'm really looking forward to, of course, traveling within the Netherlands. But there are also all these other incredible countries that we have easy access to, or will have.
Some minor things that I'm excited about in like being in the Netherlands are mountain biking again. It's a pretty big part of my life.
Yeah, I wouldn't even say that's like a minor thing. I would say that's like a pretty fundamental part of
it. Feels, I guess, like more minor compared to other things, but it was such a big part of my life for so long. And so to not be able to mountain bike while I've been in Japan.
You're a former national champion.
Yeah.
So
in my
it's
age
a big
group.
deal.
But yeah, I really miss mountain biking. And so it's kind of crazy to me that I haven't mountain biked in Japan like at all, besides like twice. So that'll be really exciting to have a mountain bike again and be able to go on trails. The other thing is our cats. My sister Mare has very kindly been taking care of them, and she's been a very good adoptive mom for Beef and Jermaine. One of our cats' names is Beef Wellington, and the other one is Jermaine. And we can finally have them back in our lives again. I know they're cats, and so they probably don't even know that we're gone, and they're happy because they can be in, the setting that they're comfortable in and they're cared for. And Mare loves them, so I'm grateful for all that. But yeah, personally, I'm really excited to have them back again. We looked at bringing them to Japan, but ultimately decided that it was too long of a flight for them and too much stress for the amount of time that they would be here. Like, ultimately, it felt more selfish to bring them with us.
Yeah, kind of like too much of a big unknown, because by the time that we realized we might be interested in staying in Japan for more than just 1 year, it was kind of not necessarily too late to start the process, but we didn't know how much longer beyond 1 year. And so it just would have been putting them through so much stress for kind of like who knows how long. But the Netherlands, I think, will be a bit of a different situation. And one, it's way easier to take them. So we actually already have all that sorted. They have their little passports and they're ready to travel.
They have their tickets for the plane already. So I'm excited about that. But yeah, it's been kind of a wild thing to decide and talk about and think about. So that's where we're at. Do you want to talk about how we're legally moving to the Netherlands?
Yeah, so this is like kind of a tricky risk. So I guess everything that we do is a bit of a risk. But you're the one that actually found it. So there's a specific visa, and it has an unfortunate acronym. It's called DAFT.
I don't know who named it DAFT.
Well, it's the Dutch-American Friendship Treaty.
Right.
And unfortunately, that gets shortened to the acronym DAFT. So the Dutch-American Friendship Treaty, and I don't know how you found it. One day you told me about it.
I don't remember. Probably one of the nights I was like frantically Googling visa things.
Like, what do I do with my life?
Yeah.
But basically, it's a convenient way for American entrepreneurs to move to the Netherlands and start a business. So this is where like the risk comes in. So honestly, before we moved to Japan, we actually almost bought a house in North Carolina. So for a long time, we've been saving money, and obviously we did not buy a house here in Japan. So we still have a good amount of money saved that we're going to use as a down payment for a house. And so instead, what we're going to do is kind of roll that down payment into moving to the Netherlands and supporting ourselves while we get off the ground to get the DAFT visa. And what that is like I said, is for entrepreneurs. So you sign up and you can apply and get this visa, and the person that holds that visa has to be self-employed. So Annie, if you don't know, you can look at her Blue Bike art. Is a very good artist, and she's been kind of slowly growing for a long time, like your art business, which you used to sell primarily on Etsy. But now you're most known for your postcard club.
Most known for.
Yeah.
I have not been able to sell on Etsy from Japan because the postage has been not, like, no one's going to pay $4 for a card and then $20 for shipping, because currently the the airmail is still not totally back on track after COVID. Anyway.
We looked at other stuff, like you could have used like a drop shipping company or whatever, or print on demand, but you like printing your own stuff and then mailing it.
Yeah. And I could have used Crema, which is Japan's version of Etsy, but of course it's just Japan, not worldwide market. Anyway.
So it's more limited. So basically, Annie is going to pursue her art full time as an entrepreneur. And so we're going to kind of invest our money, I guess, really in ourselves. And
so it does sound a little bit insane. I understand the listeners probably like, great, so you're going to move to a different country and do art.
And sell rat stickers.
Yeah. So the DAFT visa, you are an entrepreneur, but that term is used pretty lightly. I think
basically you have to be self-employed.
Right, but there's not a cap on how much money you have to make every year, or there's not a minimum, sorry.
Mm-hmm.
The minimum is 800 euros over 2 years.
No, 8,000 euros.
Oh, okay, well, either way, it's not very much.
No, and we met with the visa lawyer, and she said that's like the baseline. Mm-hmm. She said that there's not really a number, and you can make less than that, but she's like, most people I've worked with, that's like a ballpark,
like
and
the goal.
They get their visa renewed.
So the big thing is that I'm, of course, would like my art to become sustainable and become a salary. I'm going to be applying for, I'm kind of describing it as a media entrepreneurship. So I do online marketing with digital media, and then the painting is traditional media, of course. So the visa lawyer was saying that I can have both of those under the same kind of media umbrella and continue to do my freelance things.
Yeah, because you essentially sit down with like an accountant and you come up with a business plan, and then they formalize the business plan, and then once it gets approved, they're like, yeah, this sounds good. Mm-hmm. And then you can do whatever within, as long as it falls under your umbrella of your business plan.
And there's a couple other things. You have to have 5,000 euros in a bank account in the Netherlands that you don't touch. I mean, you can touch the bank account, but it can't go under 5,000 euros.
Yeah, the whole time you're on the visa.
And the visa's 2 years to start. And we'll be doing all of this with a visa lawyer just to make sure that we're doing it legally and not, nothing's crazy.
Yeah, we've read enough stories where it sounds like people do like go through this process on their own without a lawyer's help. But
and
it seemed
possible.
like... Yeah, it just seemed like such a big life shift, and we really want to like start off on the right foot and make sure we're doing things properly.
And I don't want to ship our cats over there just to find out we did it wrong and ship them back.
So we decided that we'd go with a lawyer, and we actually had a consultation with her back in October, and it was very reaffirming because we were like, is this crazy? And she was like, this is not the craziest plan I've heard. So she's like, I think you guys seem like
speaking of the salary thing, I also don't want to make it seem like we're going to be just living off my like art endeavors.
Yeah.
Another huge reason for this visa is that if my visa gets approved, which it should based on what the lawyer was saying, you, Zeb, would get a spouse visa that is much more powerful than the spouse visa here in Japan. It's not a dependent visa. You get full access to the EU workforce, essentially.
Yeah, so like any job within the EU, like on their labor market, I would have the right to work
without them having to sponsor your visa. So you'd be much more employable.
Yeah, so that was like a huge difference too, is once we started learning about that compared to what the dependent visa gets you in Japan, it really opened up kind of a lot of doors. So right now our current idea is we'll be living off savings for, at least probably 5 to 6 months. And that's kind of
not that long, but
well, we'll see. That's kind of what we have budgeted, because I can't start working until Annie's visa gets approved, and then they have to approve mine. And we've heard that can take as many as 3 months. So really there's going to be kind of like a big gap.
It scares me, but it'll be all right.
Yeah, but that's what we've been saving money for.
Yeah.
Not initially, but what we're saving money for now. And so
theoretically it'll work, and then Zeb will get hired, hopefully. And
I would rather be a stay-at-home father of 2 lovely cats.
Yeah, wouldn't we all?
But unfortunately, I'll have to get a job.
Yeah.
But I'm looking forward to it. I think it'll be really fun, and we've definitely been, doing a bit of research into the area. It's definitely a bit of a leap of faith. Yeah. And we're not looking at this naively. We've definitely been looking into a lot of, the problems and what's going on in the Netherlands. For example, there's like a massive housing crisis. There are a lot of other things happening. So
Yeah,
there's
again,
some kind of like hoops we have to jump through, and there's some worries that we have.
I know no country's perfect, definitely, like I said earlier, but we are excited about it. We're excited and scared. I guess we're a good balance because I tend to be much more worried than Zeb, but then he does like push ideas. I'll throw ideas out there, kind of like, wouldn't this be wild? Like, what if we moved to Japan? Am I right? And then Zeb's like, no, actually, like, let's look at how to logically do that. So it balances out. But yeah, if you if you want to buy some art, and if you want to employ a friendly American who's really interested in the cycling industry,
that's kind of my dream is, and also, I mean, there are just so many like exciting things about, and I've kind of realized this specifically with Dutch. So I've already started studying Dutch, and it kind of had the realization that a lot of my adult interests are more like, I'm excited to learn Dutch because a lot of my hobbies and interests now would really benefit from knowing Dutch. Like a lot of, so
I guess that's just because you're very deep in cycling.
Yeah, so like a lot of the premier and like best cycling news sources are Dutch. A lot of my favorite cyclists speak Dutch. So, for example, even there's so many really good podcasts where they're guests or they've been interviewed or they're on the podcast, but of course it's in Dutch. And so I can listen to it, but I have no idea what they're saying.
It is a very niche language, but it's perfect for cyclists, so...
Yeah, so it's kind of... There's a lot of motivation beyond just, oh, we're actually going to be... Like, we already have our tickets bought at this point, so we will be flying there. And
it's happening!
Yeah. And that'll be in September.
Right. So it's just March now, so if you're listening to this and you're like, I don't care about the Netherlands, I'll be not listening any longer once you move. That's... I mean, I'm sad, but... I get it, I guess. Don't go yet, though, because we're not moving until September.
Because what are we going to do between now and then?
Talk about only Japan.
Yeah, because we still have I still have 5 months of work. Mm-hmm. So my last day, like I mentioned earlier, would be July 31st. And then we actually decided we're going to stay in Japan until around August 20th. Mm-hmm. And so we're going to actually go on like a huge road trip.
Yeah.
And so we're going to be, of course, still here.
Because you won't have work, and I'll be able to work from anywhere I have Wi-Fi, so...
Yeah. So we'll be talking about nothing but Japan. So we're not going to just automatically start talking about the Netherlands, although at one point you'll start hearing Dutch words of the week.
Well, not until the fall, but yeah.
Not until the fall. But yeah, we'll be in Japan until August, and then going on a huge road trip. So that'll be a lot of fun. And of course, we're going to document that to the podcast and through videos. So yeah, we're not done with Japan yet.
Yeah, I hope you don't go anywhere.
But we did want to just go ahead and like put it out there.
I know, I feel kind of relieved. I feel like I've been keeping a secret from the listener.
But... I mean, we have been, unless they signed up to our email list. But yeah, we didn't want to just kind of, like a month before seemed like too short of notice.
That was my plan.
Just to tell people like, hey, we're leaving.
Be in denial until we're on the plane. By the way, we're in the Netherlands now.
Yeah.
No, so again, I have a lot of like mixed feelings, excitement and fear and sadness that we're leaving, and happiness that we have at least a plan, and also just like gratitude that we have the privilege of making decisions like this. Like, there are people who want desperately to stay in Japan and they can't make it work, but they would do anything to stay. And there are also people who would do anything to leave and they don't have an option to leave, or they have to go back to their home country and they don't have another option. So yeah, we're very fortunate that this is even like something we could plan and discuss. So
yeah, super lucky. And yeah, we're just really thankful, to be in this position, like Annie said. But definitely we'll talk about probably like more surrounding the logistics of moving to the Netherlands and more about what we're doing there, of course, in maybe late August, because we'll be in America too for like almost a month, just in America hanging out with family. So we'll have some time there to maybe talk about a little bit of travel in America and talk about our upcoming plans. And then we also, of course, we're not just going to like leave. We'll do probably like a little Japan wrap-up episode at the end when we're leaving, where I'll probably talk more about the JET program, and we'll talk more about living in Japan as a whole. But of course, it's not appropriate to do now because
Yeah, we still have 5 months.
yeah, we're not leaving, not yet.
Yeah. And the listener can tag along with me to figure out moving and everything, because I haven't started learning Dutch at all. I know nothing about Dutch.
Yeah, I think it'll be
So
fun.
we'll figure that out together. I guess similar to like when we started this podcast, if you've been listening from the beginning, it was a lot of like, well, here we go. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know exactly all the details, but we'll figure it out, which is exciting and scary.
Kind of like real life theory crafting. Like we had a general idea of what we were doing, but we didn't really know. And also the move to the Netherlands will be slightly more intimidating because I'll mention this in our wrap up when we leave Japan. But the JET program actually does give you an incredible amount of support to move to a foreign country, especially a foreign country like Japan. But when we go to the Netherlands, it'll kind of just be us.
Yeah.
Like we are going to work with a lawyer for all the visa stuff to make sure we have that squared away. So we'll have a little bit of support, but we won't have...
Yeah, there won't be a job or like help with an apartment contract or things like that.
So that'll be really, I think, pretty interesting. So you'll be able to hear us do a lot of stumbling through figuring life out in another foreign country.
I'll at least be able to read road signs, even if I don't know what they mean.
Yeah, in studying Dutch, it has been refreshingly easy. I did study German in high school and then French later, and Dutch is more similar to German, but that was so long ago in high school. But yeah, it's just so nice to like you read a word and I'm like, oh yeah. I don't need to remember. Is that ka or ku? Like
I do like really am fascinated
that?
by kanji and Japanese and just how everything is so different. Like the sentence structure is so different. So that has been like very cool. But yeah, I'm glad that it seems like it will be less of a learning curve for that language. But if you have any questions or like you just want to email and be like, what do you mean? Then you can just say hi or ask your questions or anything.
Or if we have any Dutch listeners.
Yeah,
if you live in the Netherlands, let us know because we're coming to your country. We might need some help.
But our email is ramblingramsbothams@gmail.com. It's on our website, ramblingramsbothams.com, if you just want to submit like one of those contact forms or something.
Yeah, and then please, if you only like us because we live in Japan, don't give up on us yet. We'll be here for 5 more months, and then you can leave. But hopefully you'll stay because I think it'll be a fun journey that you can be part of.
It'll be something.
Yeah. Well, anyway.
Back to Japan.
Do you have a Japanese word of the week?
I do. It's kadode, which means starting a new life or starting life anew, like setting out.
Is it leaving a gate? Is that what the kanji are?
I think that the like second
gate
kanji...
and then leave?
The first kanji is gate, yeah. The second kanji is like the exit, the day.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's kind of like a dramatic exit, like setting out on a journey type exit.
Hopefully our exit from Japan isn't going to be dramatic.
I hope
Hopefully it'll be
I'd like to come back a lot.
Pain-free and yeah.
My word, this is kind of an aside before you say your word, but I had looked up like, how do you say like new beginning, or like I was trying to look for something that wasn't just like hajimete. And I found a yojijukugo, so it doesn't really count as a word, but if you remember, we talked about yojijukugo on a different podcast, and they're basically 4-character idioms, and Japan loves them.
Ichigo, ichie.
Yeah, it's like
stuff like that.
Little pithy statements that are made up of 4 kanji, and there's a ton of them, and they are very cool. But shinki iten is one of those, so it's not really a word, but it's kind of like a phrase, and that means a fresh start. But it seemed like a little more like turning over a new leaf or like changing your attitude. It didn't really seem like a moving away type new beginning. It seemed a little more metaphorical. So that's a bonus.
2.
Yeah. Well,
that's
a
fun.
word and a phrase.
Yeah. Those are good. I like
what's your word?
Mine is sumaho.
Is that just smartphone in katakana?
It is. Yeah. It's one of those weird words that it's smartphone, but
when you spell it
Japan
in katakana,
took it and then they made it Japanese, and it's sumaho or smartphone, and so they made it a Japanese word. And that's my word because my phone alerted me a couple times. It's trash night.
Oh.
So what would I do without my samaho?
You know what?
I need it.
You have such a nice wife. I already took the trash out.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, thank goodness.
Yeah.
I don't have to go back out there in the scary world. Just tucked right in here.
Yeah. Well, I hope that the listeners tucked right in and cozy wherever you are. So thanks for listening another week to another week's episode. And I hope this wasn't too much of a shock. But yeah, thanks for being here with us on this continuing rambling journey.
Yeah, and again, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns. You can email us at ramblingramsbothams@gmail.com.
Don't give me any more concerns than I already have.
Yeah.
I'll add them to my growing list of worries. Anyway, thanks for listening.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
Bye.
Bye.